Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, we are in the difficult time of the year for us dieters and people trying to be healthy. You're going to have temptation. You're going to have some lattes here and there, and maybe sneak some eggnog and sneak a cookie that grandma made or whatever. So when you can be good, you simply snack in. They're great. They're sponsoring the podcast. They're doing some great things. And so on those good days, reach to them to keep you from grabbing that cookie. Eat something healthy so that you won't have to be fighting like crazy on January 1st, trying to get back into shape again and trying to get your belt loops, belts not so tight. So Simply Snacking's here to help you. So order from them. Again, they're a great company, and they have a unique code called Life's Best Medicine to get 10% off. So thank you for your continued support, and good luck at dodging those minefields during the holidays. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. Today, it literally is like having a friend at my house because both of us are at home because my internet died at my office. And this is an old buddy, a huge supporter of Low Carb MD podcast, kept us going, kept me and Tro from strangling each other maybe at the beginning of, being a Patreon supporter because, we're basically funding all that stuff. And Vic Basmadjian, I know I'm going to mess up your last name. I always have trouble, but Vic, I just go by Vic. Vic, welcome, man. So good to have you.
Thank you, Brian. It's just always a pleasure to chat with you, and it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and you support us here. You were just on, anyone who's listened to our Patreon show that we did, that Vic was one of those big guys who has a lot of wisdom in life. And, he's just been such a huge encouragement and a support in everything I've done. And, I think it's important. I think these are important for people to say, look, it's nice to support what you believe in. And a lot of us just kind of go through life and don't really think about it. And we don't really question what we believe in until it's someone attacks us, or we have to really think about it. And Vic, you're a guy of strong convictions. You've been successful. Anyone who's interested, go to my other podcast, Low Carb MD, and listen to episode number 46. It's Vic's story. But Vic, give him that story in a nutshell, and then we'll just talk about life stuff.
Yeah, in a nutshell, somebody who's battled obesity from early childhood, from the age of 9 years old, started battling obesity, and just getting into my teenage years and getting into my adult life, always dealt with it. It was always a struggle. As a kid, it was, there was no health consequences there, but it was just, I guess, more of the badgering and being made fun of, that, things that 50, 60 years later you don't forget, and it's kind of leaves scars. And so that was the price you paid as a kid as being obese, and kids making fun of you and laughing at you, and you're the kid in the gym that can't keep up with the rest of the gym class, and you're embarrassed to take your t-shirt off in a gym class or at the beach or at a swimming pool because that people are staring and making fun of you. So that's the price you pay as a child. And then moving forward as a teenager and as an adult, that's when the metabolic problems start, and you start to pay a price with the metabolic issues. And at age 24, 25, I was put on hypertension medication that early, and it surely was not because of stress. It was just I was so heavy. I mean, at the age of 24, 25, I was 250, 260 pounds. And, as early at that age, kept going on medication. And moving forward, I eventually, I'm trying to just summarize everything without making this too lengthy. Later on in life, aside from having acid reflux, GERD, and then eventually ending up getting sleep apnea. I had gotten a point in my life where 1 in the afternoon, I just couldn't get through the day anymore. And somebody suggested, a friend of mine suggested that you might very well have sleep apnea. And so I went for a sleep study, and sure enough, study showed that not only did I have sleep apnea, I had severe sleep apnea. The respirologist actually questioned how I'm standing on my feet with this amount of the frequency of the apneas. I believe it was in the vicinity of 45 times an hour, anywhere from as short as 3 seconds and as long as 35 to 40 seconds each time I was stopping. So yeah, it was, I wasn't in a good place, hypertension, GERD, sleep apnea. And, throughout my life, did all kinds of diets, always the low fat diets, the counting the calories, the move more, eat less. My late GP, did not once mention to me that I could have possibly been what I've learned in this journey about insulin resistance, and never was once brought up. Never was, it was always, the only advice I got was watch your salt and eat less, and that was about it. 5-minute visit and off you go. No other advice. And so after a countless amount of times of yo-yo dieting, let's call it, I wouldn't have a problem losing the weight. It's just that I just couldn't keep it off. I'd take off 30 pounds at a time or 50 pounds at a time. And within a couple of months, it was come right back on. And it's like today they choose to call keto or low carb restrictive, and I just don't get it. It was all the other diets that were restrictive and non-sustainable. Those were the ones that, as soon as the diet was over, not the lifestyle, the diet, you just come back with a vengeance because you miss everything so much. You just eat more and you just gain more than where you started. I mean, I ended up getting close to the 300-pound mark. Let's call it 300. I was at 297 pounds. So until I stumbled on low carb, I just started actually with cutting off the bread, rice, potatoes, pasta, and had no idea of keto or low carb. And then I came across the path of keto and low carb. And of course, you're not gonna, I gotta give him credit again, because that's what I stumbled on was Tro, right? And so
yeah, in the Armenian community. And then you said, okay, can I do this with my traditional food? And you started figuring out ways to do it. That's why I love guys like you and Italian Goes Keto, and said, look, I can do this and not, have to give everything I love and enjoy, because we always think of diet as restriction of not being able to enjoy the food you're eating and, eating cardboard basically, right?
Yeah.
And that you've sustained it. That's the huge part, that you've sustained it after years of struggle. And then people look at that and go, you don't know what you're talking about, Vic. It's amazing, right?
Yeah, it's totally amazing. And they still challenge me. I don't think it'll ever stop. They still call it a fat diet. They still call it all kinds of things. January, I'll be entering year 5, and they still put a challenge. And,
wow, 5 years. That is remarkable. People listening, you don't hear the Biggest Loser reunion shows. There's a reason for that. It's not sustainable. So I think sustainability is something we go, look, I can live the rest of my life this way. I'm not just going to do and say, I'm going to suffer for a month and then I'm going to eat whatever I want. I think that's where all of us have made mistakes that way. And you've had a hard year this year. Tell people like what you've been through orthopedically.
Orthopedically, and even before the orthopedic, I had other surgery, and I was supposed to have I was slated for a inguinal hernia surgery in 2020. And of course, with the COVID and all that, and just kept getting tossed and what have you. And so there was the lockdowns and, you know, operations kept getting bumped. And so at the beginning of this year, I ended up finally in 2021 having my surgery for the hernia. And the point I'm trying to make is because also, I mean, it's downtime, right? You're out again, you're home again. So between the lockdown, between the hernia surgery, and now the latest mishap that I had was I fell, took a pretty nasty spill, and ended up fracturing both my elbow and shoulder. Ended up requiring surgery on the elbow. They reconstructed the elbow with, I got a lot of hardware in me now. I'm going to set off the alarms in the airports. And the shoulder is healing. They let it heal on its own, no surgery there. And I'm in a good place now. I'm into week 7. My therapist actually, the physiotherapist, pointed out that she's saying it's remarkable of how well your scar on the elbow has healed, and you're pretty much ahead of pace, I would say, of most people of where they would be after an injury like this. And of course, I don't think it's a coincidence. I really do believe that, you know, it has to do a lot with, thankfully, the path that I've taken, and I like to think I'm at a healthy place, off all medication. I'll be 60 next year, and I'm feeling better than I ever did in my life.
Yeah, I remember you were wearing your son's shirts.
Yeah. And actually, I can't anymore. He got jealous and he started to take some weight off too. So he's still back.
Well, you're smart. You can get his old clothes, man. That's a good deal, man. Yeah, if he sizes down and you get to size down into his, that's all good. How did it affect you emotionally, like going through this with being in pain? And I know you weren't sleeping well and you had a lot of pain stuff going on with the shoulder and elbow and going through reconstruction surgery. How did that affect you?
It's been tough. It's been very tough, both physically and emotionally. Physically, it takes a toll on you when you're not sleeping, and so here's somebody who's used to most days eating in a 4 to 5 hour window. Right now, that's where I'm at my journey. I time restricted. I eat within a 4 or 5 hour window, and now with this injury, so you know what? No way. I wake up in the morning, and I guess between the cortisol and the stress and the lack of sleep, I'm hungry first thing in the morning, right? So I just listen to my body, and as far as the diet is concerned, thankfully, I'm still disciplined. I don't stray. I'm not eating crazy foods, and I'm staying within the low carb realm. I've kept my weight pretty reasonably in a good place. But then on the emotional end, it's really, you start thinking of, you know what, it points out of how you have so much time on your hands, and you're thinking of how fragile we are and how we take things for granted. And you know what, one day before, here we are, we're having a great time. I was on vacation and celebrating my mom's 85th birthday, and all of us as a family, we had gone on vacation and all was good. And then all of a sudden, a sudden spill, a sudden fall, just, drastically changes everything. And we take things for granted of how healthy we are and how good we are. And then at a drop of a dime, everything can change. Honestly, what got me through this is a lot of, our community, our low carb community. Okay, there's so many people reaching and sending me, whether it's directly on Twitter or whether some are more private, they decide to send it to you on a private level. They send you private messages, direct messages, and people asking on a regular basis how you're doing, how you are, sending prayers, sending their thoughts, that they're thinking of you, they're hoping that you're healing well. And this emotionally lifts you back up. It says there's people who care. because we're living in a world right now where sometimes I question what kind of a world we're living in. It's gone off track. It's especially with this, the whole COVID hasn't helped the situation at all. You have families that are at variance with each other. You have friends that are at variance with each other, workplace, what have you. I think everybody's lost sight of what humanity is, what reality is.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. And I think a lot of us have struggled that way. I'll tell you, Vic, when you talk about people reaching out to you, when I lost my dog a couple of years ago now, it was hard for the family. That was my buddy. Like we did so many things together. Just, it was crazy. But then I was so impressed by how many people that don't know me, they've never talked to me. They were so kind. So yeah, I know how it is when I lost my dog, and, praying for you, thinking about you, how are you holding up? How's your family? And I was like, wow, that's so nice that people take a time out of their day. So many times we pass by and go, okay, I'm not commenting on this, but it's so nice. And that's one thing that's always kind of troubled me. I've had times where I said I'm taking a month off Twitter because I just can't deal with the negativity, but there's so much positivity too. So that's it's just such a dysfunctional place, but there's so much caring and love there too. And I think tapping into that, the thing that's troubled me the most, I think, Vic, is I see someone loses 100 pounds or 200 pounds, Kalurkin Ken, right? Loses 200 pounds, and people go, well, you don't know what you're talking about, or, oh, look, you have loose skin. It's like, why would you comment like that? That's what's amazing. And I think it, like I interviewed Zuby, and he said, it says more about that person who made the comment than the person it's directed at. And I think that's what we have to keep in mind. There's a lot of nasty, unhappy people, and I always feel sad for those people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't make this kind of stuff up, okay? Pertaining to my injury, I had several people, not one, not two, several people commenting that had I not lost 100 pounds, maybe I would have broken the fall and I wouldn't have injured myself as much. I would have had the padding around me and I would have had less of an injury. And it's so that I'm so fragile now because I've lost 100 pounds. So you can't make this stuff up. It's mind-boggling. I told them, I said, had I been 100 pounds heavier, the injury would have actually been a lot worse.
And your recovery would have been a lot slower, and your sugars would have been, who knows where else you'd be with sleep apnea, with all these other things that you've overcome, reflux. Then you start taking pills. That's where, they look at your seniors and they wonder why they're in so many medications. And you realize, because they thought, here's one for your blood pressure. Here's one for this. Here's one for that. Oh, you hurt your back. Here's a pill for that. Oh, you're upset stomach now. Here's a pill for that. And then all of a sudden you're on 35 medicines, as a senior, and you think, wow, does no one ever want to take those medicines away? But you're right. So many people they'll blame you. You've made huge life improvements, and they'll blame you. And you were a lot higher risk of surgery when you were 100 pounds heavier too, right? People don't think about those kind of things. They think, well, you would just padded your joint. You would have been fine if you didn't do this thing. It's your own fault basically for taking care of yourself. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's outstanding. It's unbelievable.
And you also raise up that whole issue too of like, look, when you're not sleeping well, when you're in pain, when you're stressed, when and plus you can't exercise because your shoulder hurts and all that, and so all those things affect us. So that's the things. It's not just what we're eating; it's lifestyle also.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everything. It changes everything, and it makes you realize that how fortunate we are. And you know what? Since we're on the Life's Best Medicine podcast, I'll bring it up and I'll say, you know what? It could have been a lot worse, and I believe that God was looking over me, okay? Because this was such a nasty fall. It could have very well been my head that could have hit the cement. And I believe that he was watching over me, that it ended up being an elbow and shoulder injury, and that it stopped at that. And it could have very well been a traumatic head injury because I went flying backwards, and that didn't happen. I was spared that. So I'm not, I'm a spiritual person. I believe in God. I believe in the supreme being, and I'm not the person that's at church services every week, but I have faith and I believe in it, and I believe He's watching out over us, and I believe that when things like this happen, there was a source of protection there, and I really believe that.
Yeah, I think that's a huge topic. That's one thing, I started this podcast, if I talked about faith or these kind of things on Low Carb MD, people get upset and they go, how can a scientist believe this stuff? How do you believe this stuff? But when you go through something like you have, me being a doctor, I've seen miracles. I've seen stuff that I can't explain logically. I've seen stuff that fragile people surviving and people who should have survived don't survive, all those kind of things. And you start thinking, wow, there's more to this than just math and science. There's so much more to us as people. And if we're struggling spiritually, we're struggling emotionally, those kind of things affect our health. There's no question in my mind. There's no question about in my mind. I see it all the time. And people get better spiritually, they get better emotionally, and they feel better and their outlook's better. And someone like you, when you go through something like that, some people just give up. For instance, if you look at the mortality rate of a senior with dementia, breaking a hip, it's worse than lung cancer, because they lose hope and they don't understand what's going on and the pain and all the misery. And I think they just give up, but their mortality rate is through the roof. So it's one of those things, like what keeps you going like this when when you're struggling, you're not sleeping, you're in pain. Having faith does help you get through those times. Even if you don't, like you said, I don't go to church every week. I'm not like reading my Bible and, spreading the gospel to everyone. But when things go wrong is when you start realizing what really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm a firm believer of that, and you start believing what the important things are in life, and again, this world has become has gone off. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if probably everybody won't agree. It's people the like-minded that are going to agree on this topic, and it's not obviously it's not the world that I used to know, that I grew up in. Okay, things have changed so much, and everything's become so material, and everything's become there's no compassion, there's no honor, there's no everything is just set on material and the mighty buck, and somebody will sell somebody out for $1, and there's no honor, there's no, I've grown up to be like, what, your word is, your word is your word, okay? And even if it means you're going to take a beating because of it, you got to stick to it, because that's the word you gave, okay? Mm-hmm. And today it's not like that anymore. People will just turn around and I'm not saying it's everybody by any means, and this is why I follow this podcast, okay? I see you've had so many guests, and you hear their stories, and it gives me hope. And I hear that there's so many other people that are, like-minded, and there's a lot of good people. But I don't know. I'm being straight up. I'm a straight shooter. I think we're outnumbered. I think on the overall, it's hard to come across people that are sincere, people that are on the same page as you. I have a hard time dealing with that sometimes, and this community and this podcast has made me deal with it a little bit easier. I know people that I've known all my life, and because of my lifestyle now, have kind of shied away from me, okay, because it makes them uncomfortable. Or let's say if we're going to go to a restaurant or whatever, I don't know if they feel guilty because they're not doing something about it, or I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but
yeah. And you're not a guy who pushes your views on other people. You just eat the way you do. And I find that when I go out with friends, they're like, "Oh no, can we still have the bread if you're not?" I'm like, "Go for it. Enjoy it. Totally. I don't have any problem with that. You can get away with it more than I can. That's okay. I don't mind." So, and then, I think that's such a huge topic. And I'm kind of a little bit on the other side. I think there's so many good people out there, but the good people don't pound their chests and stand up and do this stuff, right? Like our Patreon supporters, you look at how many there are, right? How few there are out of all the listeners, and you realize like they're not pounding their chest. That's why I want to do the Patreon show and have you all on to say, hey, look, these are good people that believe in something, and they're putting their money where their mouth is, or where their heart is, and they see the value. But a lot of people see value, but they just don't think like, oh, you know, it's worth $2 or whatever. You know, you and I were talking about that a little bit before, but you know, it's the good people who keep us going. It's the good people, because I want to provide something that's going to give you hope, me hope. When you're down on your back and you can listen to someone's story that says, oh, okay, I can make it if they did, you know?
Yeah, listen, this is a topic, and I want all the listeners to know that it's not as if I'm trying to promote them to get to, or I'm not judging them in any way whether they do support any particular podcast in this realm. Okay, I mean, they all have their place. You have the Low Carb MD, fine. You have your podcast, Life's Best Medicine. There's plenty of other platforms that's out there, and I try. I listen. I do the best I can. I try to support the ones that I truly believe in, that I find that bring value. I'm not going to judge people, okay? Because and if it's, you know what, not everybody has the means, so I don't want to judge anybody financially or whatever it may be. But sometimes I just stop and think that to say, you know, when I see Low Carb MD with 4 million downloads, there's certainly got to be a handful more of people that can help support this, okay, at the cost of having one less coffee a week. And whether it's your podcast or there's other platforms as well. I'm not just trying to promote one particular podcast. The people who are doing this podcast, especially in this community, are giving up their valuable time. They're educating a lot of people, changing lives, saving lives. And when they have to pay money from their pocket on top of it, there's something wrong with that picture, you know? And so at least to be able to break even. And so, I don't know, again, I'm old fashioned. I'm the type of guy that says, I've gotten so much out of this. The least I can do is support it to whatever anybody's capacity is, you know, whether I'm not going to put a monetary value on it. I'm not going to talk about how much anybody should give, but certainly everybody has the capacity to give a little something, you know. That's how I feel, and I just feel again, that becomes a matter of, you know what, you can't be taking all the time. When you receive, that's how I've been brought up. When you receive, you got to give. It can't be a one-way road.
Yeah, man, it's so funny you say that, because just right before we went on, I just jumped on Twitter for a second. I said, look, we're all waiting for the hero to come and save the day. The hero is you. Like when there's a catastrophe, like in 9/11, people helped each other. Everyone just helped dig out everyone. Everyone jumped in and they put their lives at risk to help others. So, you know, the thing is, be that hero for your neighbor, for someone. That's what I'm hoping this podcast does. And, you know, the financial part of it, that's one thing. You know, Simply Snack, and thank you, you know, for getting these going, because I want to get the stories up. I'm like, look, I can't pull my bank account all the time, because, you know, I started a new business and took a pay cut, and something else I believe in is helping patients that way. But, you know, I think it's one of those things where you start realizing what really matters. And the point I was making is, by helping someone else, the rewards you get are things you'll never get by being selfish. You'll never get those rewards. And that's why I really wanted people to realize, like, you know, if someone's hurting, help them. Like if your neighbor said, hey, Vic, you're hurting, let me go help you with the lawn, whatever. Things like that are real tangible things that doesn't take that much time. And a lot of it's not financial. It's just caring. Just say, hey, I noticed you were struggling. Can I go get shopping for you today, Vic? Or whatever it is. You know, I think a lot of times we're so focused on ourselves that we just we don't worry about other people anymore. And that's what I think we all see around us.
Yeah, and it's a matter of giving your time and helping people, right? It's I know myself and so many other countless people that are, you know, let's say on the Twitter platform, that are, you know, none of us are doctors, none of our thing, you know, some of us are more knowledgeable than others, but we all give in our own ways. And I know that a lot of us are answering people who send us, they're comfortable enough to ask us a question, and they send us messages. And you know what, I'm giving my time on that, and I do it. I'm not bringing this up to point out and pat myself on the shoulder. It's something that makes me feel good. It's something that I want to do. It's something that I'm compelled to do because somebody helped me. So why shouldn't I help somebody else? Okay. Nobody charged me to listen to the Low Carb MD or to write something on Twitter or to ask a question. And so many people jumped in and gave their opinion, and I learned from that. So Now that I have a certain knowledge to within my capacity, why shouldn't I pass that on? Why should I just be always taking? It's time to give back. So I truly believe in that.
Well, and I think that's a point, you know, the most criticism we've taken, Tro and I on the podcast, like they give us a thumbs down because there was a dog barking in the background. That's real life. It happens, right? So, you know, it's things like that. As a matter of fact, my dogs are barking right now because I usually don't do this from home. That's why, because they're getting all excited. So anyways, those kind of things, if you want perfection. But what I find is the people who always criticize, none of them were supporters. You don't even support us and you're criticizing. You should have better lights. You should do this. Like, we're paying for the pocket. Give us a break. I'm not going to go broke. I mean, because I think it's the content that matters and your story that matters, not how pretty, you know, the production is, right? So I think it's those kind of things where you start realizing, okay, what I'm getting at is people are very good at criticizing rather than saying, hey, the lighting's not very good. I'm going to send you some new lighting, Brian, so you guys look better, whatever, you know, like when you can really contribute and really believe in something, right? And I think there's so many people now. I think there's more and more people coming out of the woodwork who realize, hey, I want to educate my kids. I want to make sure they have good integrity. And like what you were saying, we're raised in a certain way. I just tweeted something else. I must have been having premonitions of what we were going to talk about, Vic, because, you know, I was saying, look, I was raised, you stand up for the kid who's getting bullied. You stand up. You when there's something unfair, you stand up. You do the right thing no matter what the cost is. And at some point you say, gosh, Brian, it's easier just to shut up and not, you know, I don't know if you saw my tweet yesterday, but I was talking about the guys who warned the captain of the Titanic 2 days before. They said, look, in this exact area, there's a ton of ice caps. We're concerned. And the guy ignored them all. And probably said, these idiots, why are they, you know, leave me alone. This ship is invincible. And he sunk the ship. So if he would have listened to but the point is the people who spoke up, they did their job. They can't steer the ship. And for us docs who see some concerning things, we say we can speak up, but we can't steer the ship. We can only say our part. So at some point you look back and go, I did my part. I warned you, but you didn't listen. Just like with low carb or with whatever it is, like, look, I want to help you. And then I don't think we're the type of people to say, I told you so when someone's suffering and struggling and all those things. But there's a lot of people who want to say, I told you so.
Yeah, and I really hope I have so many friends. You know what, this journey of mine, I've been able to have an effect on certain friends, and I've been able to help them. And you know, it's a great feeling, and it's, you know what, you help these people, and there's so many more that I keep planting seeds the best I can, whether it's directly to them or on Facebook or on Instagram, or, you know, they're not so much on Twitter, but I keep planting seeds, sending subliminal messages and hoping that they would reach out. And I've told them, okay, it's like, I'm ready to help them on any level. And the ones that need it the most are the ones that don't reach out. And I just hope, like you said, it doesn't come to the day where it's, I don't want to have to say I told you so because of they received some, you know, a bad outcome of what's going on with their health. You have the chance to turn things around now, and why don't you take it? And I don't blame them. You know what? A lot of them are just discouraged because they've tried so many times and they failed. Like I was the same. You get to a certain point that you just start believing that this can't work. There's nothing that's going to help me turn things around. But so I'm trying to lead by example, and hopefully they'll take my offer in me extending my hand and trying to help them. But you can't force anybody, and you can't. At a certain point, it's like you're meddling in their lives, and you can't go down that path.
Well, I think that's an important thing, because I've always looked at the parallels of low carb and faith, right? It's the same thing. If you're in people's space, you shouldn't eat that. You're terrible. You shouldn't do that. No one wants to hear that. You know, if you say, hey, look, you know, if you know, when they see you're doing well, they go, Vic, you lost all this weight. What are you doing? That's a different thing than you going, look, I lost 100 pounds. I'm going to tell you, you got to do exactly what I did, because something else may work for them, right? So I think in religion it's the same way. If your life's going well, then okay, do your thing. If you're happy and, you know, you think rocks are going to, you know, save your life, then believe that. That's all good with me. I don't care. But, you know, I think at some point you kind of realize that we have an obligation to say, hey, look, I can help you. And if you want and the other important thing, I have a friend who's a multimillionaire, and he says all the time, people come to him and say, I want you to mentor me, right? I want you to mentor me, rub your magic whatever on me. And he'll say, read these 2 books and get back to me. He says, you know how many people have read those 2 books? 0. And they come back and goes, oh, did you ever get a chance? Oh, I haven't had a chance yet. Oh, I haven't had a chance yet. And I think that's what we struggle with too. Like, people want you to tell them, here, eat this, here's your meal plan, instead of saying, let me understand, let me show you, and so you understand insulin resistance. And I think, I think what COVID did do is bring out this whole insulin resistance, metabolic health, the importance to people. I think people are starting to understand that and say, look, your chance of survival, it goes away. And the big things that Asim Malhotra we were talking to, and it kind of surprised me actually, that number 1, metabolic health, number 1 indicator of survival or dying from COVID, metabolic health, right before you get sick. Number 2, depression, anxiety, mood. Number 2 indicator. And like, wow, that is pretty impressive that it has that much of a role on our health. So if you go around grumpy and antagonizing people and be that person on Twitter who's making negative comments, you're putting yourself at risk by being a jerk, basically, right?
Yeah, it's funny how so I guess, you know what, it's the same for everybody. I mean, humans will be humans, and no matter where we are, no matter what community we are, and no matter what it is, they're all the same way. I've told so many people, not told, I mean, I've just asked them for their, you know, if you don't believe what I'm saying, because, hey, you know what, Vic's not a doctor, Vic's not, you know, a medical professional or whatever. So, you know what, there may be a little bit of doubt of what he's saying. So I'll use Low Carb MD podcast library and say, you know what, if his problem is heart related, I'll say, listen to episode number so-and-so. Or if it's diabetes related, it's episode so-and-so, and it's a doctor that's talking, so it might carry more weight. Or I've told people to, you know, enough people to watch, let's say, Fat Fiction, the movie. And every time I ask them, well, you know, did you listen to episode so-and-so, or did you watch Fat Fiction? And the answer is no, I had no time. But the very same person has plenty of time to watch an 8-part miniseries of whatever movie or whatever, you know. So it's, do you want to invest? You need to invest in your own health. The person needs to want to be ready to help themselves and realize that until they don't have time to invest in themselves, it's just not going to happen. And but it's a hard sell. I don't try to sell it. I tell them, I'm here. You know where to find me. I've given you the encompassing of it. And whenever you're ready, because the person has to be ready, can't be pushed into it.
Yeah.
They have to be ready. So when they're ready, I'm there for them, and I'll be glad to help, you know, the best I can.
Exactly. That's why I was like we're meant to be a light in the darkness. Not, you don't shine the flashlight right in people's eyes where they're blinded. You just go, hey, look, if you want to talk, I'm here. That's how good this podcast. Anyone who's listening, they chose to push play today, and they chose to listen to this over all the other things they could have done, you know. And a lot of people are out on walks or out doing stuff, and I love to hear the stories. You know, that's how I'm paid a lot of times. That if someone goes, oh, you know, that episode with Vic that changed my life. Really cool, because I know that I had a part of playing that platform, of providing that platform, that connection. I love connecting people. Like, if you have something you're doing, someone else says, hey, you two would be a great fit, why don't you guys do something together, right? That would be cool, right? So I think a lot of times we just get so self-focused. I think that's kind of what we're both saying, is that don't be too self-focused, because you're never going to be happy. When you get upset that your neighbor got their house painted because yours isn't painted, just be happy for them and go, wow, it looks really nice. It's good. Be happy for other people. And then those blessings will come. I think one of the things I've learned is the more I give, the more I receive. Right. And sometimes, you know, as a matter of fact, one of the jokes, one of my good friends, when I bought my house right before the crash of everything, 2008, I asked my buddy, who was my financial guy, I said, hey, what do you think, man? Do I have money to tithe still on what I'm making and what my house costs and all that? And he started laughing. He said, I've seen your finances. You can't afford not to tithe. Meaning, you're going to need God's help in this. You better do the right thing, man. Don't spend your money on other stuff that's not going to pay. And I'm telling you, I mean, it was good advice. And he was joking, but he was serious too. But you start looking at that, saying, the more I give, the more I get. You know, it's not, you don't give to get, but it just happens that way.
Right. Right.
You know, like someone like you, like being on your back and being helpless, like, you know, when you can't use your arm and you're in pain and miserable, like, you appreciate things a lot more. I'm sure you appreciate your arm a lot more than you did before all this stuff.
100%. You just, like I said earlier, you take it for granted that just the simple thing of being able to cut your own your own protein, your own food. You're being able to cut your own steak. You take it for granted, and all of a sudden you need somebody cutting it for you, or else you're not going to be able to eat. So yeah, we take things for granted, and we're blessed to be healthy. We're blessed to have the good Lord looking over us and keeping us safe. And don't take it for granted, and because at a stop of a dime, everything can change. And just appreciate what you have, be happy, and you know, forget about the material stuff. That's not what's going to make you. I mean, not forget. I mean, it's fine. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't enjoy the good things in life, but I don't make it a priority. Okay, it's not what it's not what's going to bring happiness. You can have all the material in the world, and you know what, an expensive car or a big home is not necessarily going to bring a happy home, whereas a happy home can possibly do the reverse, right? It can motivate you to be happy and work hard to attain your goals.
Yeah, I see a lot of people who are slaves to their nice car, they're slaves to their nice house, because they have to work tons of hours and they're away from their family, and they end up divorced with half a nice house, right? Because you forget what really matters, the relationship. I think that's what it comes at. As a matter of fact, my uncle, before he passed away, my dad asked him, he said, what really matters in life? That's why kind of like I think about this with this podcast. What really matters in life? And he said, in the end, it's all about relationship. It's all about relationship. It's about who you've impacted, who's impacted you. What do you think about when you're dying? You think about life experience, when you blew it, when you did right, you know, the people who helped you along the way, the people you helped along the way. And, you know, you don't say, oh, I'm so glad I had 2 cars instead of 1, or my car was, you know, a newer model than my neighbor's, that kind of stuff. We get so caught up. And I've, as a matter of fact, I was out with my wife last night. Don't tell anyone, Vic, but we went out and said, let's get a beer. And we went and had a beer and we were talking, but you know, there's some guys that were just kind of common guys that were construction guys. We started talking, then we were having a really good conversation. I was thinking, you know, some people miss out on these conversations because they're only going to talk to the elite of the elite. They're not going to talk to the guys who are working hard on the ground. And I was raised in a way where it's like, if you want to be in a business, you work your way up from the bottom and you figure out everything and you show everyone respect, right? And not be, oh, I'm the owner's son, I'm going to be the boss, and I'm going to tell you all what to do and come in and be a jerk to everyone. I think so many people, that is a huge life lesson, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And again, respect. It's the biggest, you know, my late father taught me, and I get emotional. And on it, the biggest thing he's taught me is respect, to be respected. Okay, you can't expect respect when you don't give respect. And again, it's the same for everything. It's you can't just expect to take and never give. And so I was taught that, you know, these values, these morals, and there's so many more. And you know, it's just it's the good things. It's the old-fashioned way, and you just see a lack of it today. But you know, there's so many people that, especially in our little community, I value a lot of people. They know who they are, okay, and they're going to be the ones who are for sure they'll hear this podcast. And you know, there's quite a few people made out of gold, and they're giving, and they're amazing people. And these are the people that give me hope and say, you know what, that listen, there are other peoples that were brought up the same way and do have the same values. And it's comforting, and it's nice to know. So this is why I stay engaged in this community, and I hang around the people that give me hope. And I know that if they're in need, I would reach out. I would, you know, give a lending hand, and if I'm in need, they would give a lending hand. And the weirdest thing is, I've never met these people face to face, and that's the craziest part. Okay, but
yeah. You know, and Vic, you know, you raise a point. Like, just look at the emotion when you talk about your dad. I feel the same way when I talk about my dad. Some of this stuff I remember, like you said, you shake your hand. My dad was in a business thing, and he shook this guy's hand, said, "Hey, here's our deal." They had a deal. Some guy offered my dad 5 or 10 times what the other guy was paying him. And my dad said, sorry, I can't. And, well, why not? He goes, I promised him. And he says, do you have a contract? I said, yeah. I shook his hand. And I told him, it was a done deal. He said, no amount of money is worth my integrity in that. So you start, when you see people like that, that's an example. If I would have seen him do the opposite, I'd say, well, what's his word mean? You know, and we're being watched. You know, our kids are watching us. Everyone's watching our integrity and what we do in life. And if I say one thing and do another, you know, I think that's the thing is we see a ton of hypocrisy, right? Like you say, okay, don't drive your car, but I'm going to fly my jet everywhere. It's like, wait a minute, how come you can fly your jet everywhere? And I'm like, and we see it over and over. You start saying, well, wait a minute. If you believe it and you're doing it, I respect you. That's cool. You believe in a cause. But so many people say they believe in a cause, but behind the doors, they don't believe in that cause. Some people go to church and say, yeah, I'm a Christian, but then you do all the bad stuff. It's like, well, really? Is it just because you go to church that makes you like a guy like you who doesn't go to churches frequently, but you get life and you understand these things, right? That's what matters, is getting it. And that's why what you're saying, when you were talking, I had a vision of these old farmers I've run into, and you talk to them about politics or life, and they get it. They understand integrity. They understand morals. They understand doing the right thing. They understand hard work of earning something. You know, I think, you know, a lot of kids, they never had to work hard to get it. It was handed to them and they expect it. So entitlement, all these things we see. I mean, as we get older, we start seeing all these things like for what it's worth, you know?
Yep, 100%, 100%.
Oh man, Vic, this hour went by too fast. I have a question for you, man. What's life's best medicine for you? When you look back, like in the final analysis, when you look and you go, what really matters? I know we talked about a lot of stuff, but like you're on your deathbed and you go, okay, guys, here's the real important stuff.
The important stuff for me is, like I mentioned, is to live a life with value, with morals, with respect, have a happy family, have a happy home, respect your parents, spend all the time you can with them, because you don't know when they're gone. And I know that I've learned something from you, and I'm gonna probably retire a lot earlier than my employers would want me to retire. And when they ask me why, I'm gonna blame you, and I'm gonna tell them that it's because of this guy Brian Lenzkes. And you know, like you said, it's, you know what, you took a big cut, but you're happy in life, right? So I intend to go down that same path. I know that this low carb community and helping people get their health has become a calling for me, I believe. I can't monetize it. I'm not, you know, I can get a little bit of income, but just you know, call it an income, but it won't even come close to what I earn in my living, right? But that's okay. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happy doing that. I want to help people. So it's just about giving, being happy, do what makes it happy. And when my days are done on this earth, when my mission is done, I want people to say that, you know what, this guy tried to make a difference and make this world a better place. And whether he succeeded or not, the story will tell eventually. But I want to contribute to making this place a better place in any way I can.
Yeah, that's a big one. You know, I think leaving it better than when you came. You know, if you go for a hike and you see trash and you pick it up, like you left it better than when you came. If you throw trash down there, you left it worse than when you came. And the same thing is in dealing with people. If we throw trash at them all the time and make them feel bad about themselves and their accomplishments, that's how you leave them worse than when you met them. And I think that's, Ken was just talking about that. Ken Armstrong, who I love, you know, I love his take on life. But you know, that's so important. Leave it better than when you found it, you know. And this podcast is better by having you on and hearing your story and your wisdom and what you've been through, and you know, your life matters. And I think what you've taught your family, your example, your community, your neighborhood, they're better because you're in it. That's what really matters.
We're trying the best we can, and I'm sure it's the same. It's the same for you. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do, and you lead by example, and you're preaching an amazing message, and you're a humble person, and this is all we can ask, to be hooked up with, have a relationship with people like yourself. It's an honor and privilege to call you a friend.
It's an honor for me too, man. I appreciate it. Everyone, you heard a lot of wisdom here. Vic, thank you so much for joining me. You know, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and leave the world a better place. Leave it a better place. That's the best thing you can do.
Be well, my friend.
You too, man. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information. And hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.